Hello and welcome everyone to the first episode of this webinar series, The Mood Show. And the series is brought to you exclusively by Memo Pundits. Because this is the first episode, I'd like to briefly explain as to why we came up with such an idea. As you know, before Memo Pandit started organizing workshops and creating online courses and providing mentorship for mood court competitions, there was hardly any professional guidance available for law students who are interested in mooting. And hence, our focus was to create a holistic mooting infrastructure for the benefit of all interested students. And in the furtherance of this vision, we have launched this webinar series where where we will share the first-hand experience of various moot winning teams with all of you, and with the hope that this will help you to be better prepared and better equipped with the skill set which you need for your next moot court competition. We can begin. So, in this first episode of the Mood Show, we have with us the winning team of Symbiosis Trial Advocacy Competition 2020, also known as SICTA 2020. So, this team comprises of three fourth-year law students from Institute of Law, Nirma University. We have with us Vinisha Jain, Yash Dadich, and Manya Anjaria. And please note that all the members have varied experiences with respect to moot court competitions. But it is very important here to know that this moot was their first trial advocacy competition for each of them, actually. And despite this being their first take on trial advocacy, they have managed to emerge victoriously, for which I guess they deserve a loud round of applause. And we are pleased to have them as our speakers for this session. I'm sure their experiences will help you to prepare better for your next moot court competition. So yeah, let us start. First of all, guys, congratulations for your victory in SICTA 2020. And my first question to begin the session with is that I want you all to tell our viewers as to why exactly did you prefer going for a trial advocacy competition, uh, considering that there are a plethora of other moot court competitions which are available. Yeah, I guess we could begin with you, Vinisha. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Not a problem. So I particularly chose trial advocacy because I had moot experiences prior to this competition, but I had never done a trial advocacy competition.
Okay.
So I wanted a trial advocacy competitions experience as well, and that's why we chose it.
All right, great. So, of course, trial advocacy is very important for any law student, as I told you, to understand the working of a real court. And one more benefit comes to my mind right now, that all of you all of the attendees who are struggling with the procedural subjects, CPC, CRPC, evidence, trial advocacy moots help you to get a very good command on these procedural laws, because you get to practice those procedures in real court. Yeah, Yash.
Yeah, I chose this because I had a keen interest in criminal law per se, and
Okay.
I have participated in mock trials, intra-college competitions, so I did wanted to go for it. And this was international criminal law, so I was interested to explore the international
Okay.
domain of criminal law. That's why I chose it.
All right. So, and now this question, the next question is something which has bogged down anyone who is willing to moot, and before starting the moot, it has bogged down everyone. So, how much time did you guys actually invest for this competition, and what was the average number of hours per day that you had to devote for the competition?
We had our college mock trials in December, right?
All right.
And after that, we were selected in that in intra-college mock trials, and then we were allotted this basically this mock symbiosis mock. Then what
Okay.
happened was, then in December we had to do our internship. So it is a course in our college. We had to do our internship in Delhi. So that was our first hurdle which we faced. That because and the mock was coming on in March. So because for me and the Adit, international law was a very new subject. So we had to start from the scratch. How to do it? What are the procedures? Even what are the authorities in international law? So it was a first hurdle. But because we had our internship planned, so what we did was we all three interned in Delhi, and
Oh,
then what we did was there is a very famous library in front of Supreme Court in Delhi named ISIL. It is only for international law.
yes, yes, yes.
So we sat there and we researched on that. So in the daytime we used to do internship, and then we get free. We all sat together and worked for the mock competition.
So by what time were your internships over, and was it
It
synchronized?
it depended on our advocate. So majorly the average time was we
Uh,
got off 6 7, and then we had
and
some
so,
refreshment. And we
okay. So, and till what time did you guys sit in the library and prepare?
we said actually the first problem came was that they wanted some permission from our college. So
Okay.
we talked to our college, they gave permission, and then we gave that permission to the library authorities, and then they allowed us in
All
first of
right.
all. And
Okay.
then we actually said from the timings which were comfortable for us depending on our internship schedule and all that stuff.
Okay. So this is, I have also one question wherein I'll be addressing this concern, and we'll come to that later. But for now, so for the benefit of everyone who's watching this right now, I would really like to know in detail that how are these trial advocacy competitions different from any conventional moot court competitions? Because as I pointed it out, they are gaining a lot of momentum these days. What is the reason? Why are they becoming so important, and how are they different from a traditional conventional moot court competition?
I think there is a major difference in conventional moots and trial advocacy because in moots you present your arguments. Basically, you go for a research, you study a law, and you present some arguments. But in mock trial competitions, you have to put some evidence in front of the court. You have to go for cross examination, chief examination. You have to develop your arguments on the spot sometimes. You can't be well prepared for a mock trial because anything can happen at that time. Your
Hmm.
witness might go hostile and you might forget something. So there are a
Hmm.
lot of things that you have to come on the spot for mock trial competitions. And this is a procedural law we are talking about, CRPC, IPC evidence. So I think we all have much knowledge about the substantive law, but we don't go further to study
Exactly.
about procedural laws. So it gives an opportunity to read more about procedural law and not just classroom education. You have to go beyond that. You have to research like a real advocate that this is your case and you're fighting it. So
Exactly.
this is the major difference, I think.
Yeah, it's basically I guess the procedural aspect is a lot important when it comes to trial advocacy.
Absolutely.
I guess in conventional moods, you only argue on procedure when it comes to the issue of mostly maintainability. But apart from that, you only deal with substantive issues and substantive laws.
Yes.
So, yeah. Yash, I'd like you to elaborate more on how you have to think on your feet when you are conducting a trial rather than compared to a traditional moot court competition.
First of all, in mock trial, you will get a lot of evidence. You will get FIRs, you will get statements, punchnamas, and everything.
Apart from the moot proposition, in
Yes,
traditional moot,
you will get facts, and then you will get FIRs, statements of
Hmm.
witnesses. You will get
Hmm.
punchnama, you will get photographs, and a lot of
Hmm.
reports. It depends on the competition. So you have to study them all. You have to break down them, like what is there that I can use for my story. So you have to read the problem such that you can pinpoint that this is the point that I want to explain, and this is given on this page number. This certain point is mentioned in that report,
Hmm.
so that
Yeah.
you don't get confused because you will not be having much time when you are giving your oral rounds.
Hmm.
So I think study about evidences, like how you can break them down, take out little discrepancies that you will have. If you provide the organizers about the problem, they might give you clarification that this is a discrepancy and we would like to correct. And if not, then it's your benefit. You can use it
Hmm.
for your own story, that this is a discrepancy, this is the fault of an inspector or whatever. And for trial advocacy, the main part is comes to the picture when you are doing examination. You have to
Okay.
go for a chief examination and cross examination, and you
Hmm.
have to be improv about it, that you have to ask certain questions that you haven't prepared well.
Yeah, anything might happen during the real.
Anything might, the witness
Yeah.
might get hostile. So what will you do in that situation? You can't
One
be
more
prepared
question.
for that.
One more question. One more doubt I have. Are all these witnesses? Uh, does someone from your team play the witness, or does the organizers? Do the organizers provide the witness, or
Uh,
how does it happen?
Organizers will provide you the witnesses, and sometimes it might happen that you have 2 3 rounds, so you are
Hmm.
getting the witness for someone called Rohan. Okay, you get Rohan for your witness in the first round, but Rohan will be witness for other team in the next round. This is possible.
Alright.
So it happens sometimes that Rohan might reveal that your points to the other team beforehand, but you can't do anything about it.
Acha, for everyone's benefit, I guess if everyone should be on the same page, Yash, could you please elaborate a bit on the entire procedure of how a trial proceeds? What happens first, then what happens,
Okay,
then the
yes,
preview?
sure.
Yes. So
I
I
will
guess
go
they,
step
they
by
will
step.
have a better idea and they will understand your answers in a better manner.
Okay, I'll go step by step. I'll explain everything. So first of all, you'll have to brief your witnesses before your all round begins. You might get 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes. So you have to brief your witnesses that this is our story, and witnesses will be well read with the problem if you are lucky.
Mhm.
So you have to brief them about your story, what they have to speak, and what you can provide them list of questions that you will be asking in their examination, and you can also provide them questions that other team might ask. So you have to prepare them well. You
All
have
right.
to tell them that you have to speak these things and don't get hostile and everything.
Uh-huh.
Then your oral round proceeds. Then you will go for opening statement. Every team will go for opening statements. You have to tell them that this is the case. Don't state the facts. I
Acha.
don't know if I apply this thing, though I don't state facts in the opening statement, because you will develop facts more and more in your examinations and evidences. So it's better
Exactly.
not to state facts. It will extend your time. So don't state facts. Just go with the that how will you prove your point and what will you be explaining by these all witnesses and all. So give a
Acha.
brief about your procedure that you will be
Just
adopting.
one thing. Everyone, this at this stage, at the stage of trial, the duty of the court is to record the facts, and therefore Yash is saying that in the
Yeah.
opening statements you do not start with the facts because our facts are yet to be recorded through the witness testimonies. So yeah, proceed.
Yeah. Then you will be done with your opening statements. Then witness number one will come. Then you will go for the chief of your witness, and then other team will cross the witness. This will go on chief cross, and then you will go for their chief and their cross. So this depends on the competition. They will provide you how will you go for it.
Hmm.
After that, you have done your examinations and you have provided evidences. You might provide certain applications. There are certain applications that you want to provide that you want witness to be present in the court while you are examining other witness. There is application for that. You will provide application that accused can be testified. So there are certain applications that you should provide if it is called for. Then you will go for closing statements. Then in closing statement, you have to summarize everything that this witness said this witness said this. I want to make this point that he didn't corroborate with his statements, and you have to point out everything that has happened and then present a closing statement. That is your arguments, and that you have to develop when you're conducting your examinations.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is how the mock trial is conducted.
Yes, and one more thing that which I would like to point out, the difference between conventional moods and trial advocacies is, I guess, the demeanor with which the speaker speaks. In conventional moods, you are a bit more calm and composed,
Yes.
but as far as the trial advocacies are concerned, it requires a bit different approach. You should be more assertive while speaking, but not at the cost of the Tariq pe Tariq routine. But yes, having said that, you have to keep a charging stance while making your arguments.
I just want to share one incident if I can, if
Ha
I
ha,
may.
please.
This is very true that you have to be calm, but don't be like over aggressive. You don't shout in the court. I tried this once and I
Exactly.
was scolded for it. And don't do it. Even my one of my best friend used to do it. This he adopts a very aggressive technique. This is
Uh,
good sometimes, but don't overdo it. Don't be over aggressive. This is not
yes.
good.
You have to keep in mind it's not a movie; it's real trial going on there.
Yes.
So yeah, this gets me to my next question, which is again somehow similar to the previous question. What is the and I'd like Vinisha to answer this. Vinisha, what is the role of a researcher in a trial advocacy? And yes, again coming back to the question which you just addressed slightly, how did you guys manage the ISI library thing? How did you guys plan it out? How did you manage it? And considering that the lack of availability of research sources during these times is very prevalent amongst law students, because the colleges are not open, students do not have access to the libraries. So how did you come up with this? And yes, please elaborate on this.
About the role of a researcher. In our particular competition, all three of us were researchers, and actually, we like never got to this point because all three of us could be speakers in this particular competition. So, like, it's not necessary for one person to be to be a researcher and for the other
Yeah,
to be
definitely.
speakers in this competition. But in general, what I can tell is, because we were considering this earlier, so a researcher particularly has to know what the other two do not know. So this happens quite a lot, because once like generally the format of any moot is
Hmm.
that first you have a date for your memorial submissions, and then you have a subsequent date for your oral rounds or oral submissions. So generally there is like a 10 to 15 days gap, or sometimes if you're lucky it's a month gap
Hmm.
between your oral submissions and your memorial submission. So like generally it is like the memorial preparation, it is generally believed, I don't know why, but there, I've heard this myth a lot, that the researcher is the one who is responsible for the memorial,
Yeah.
and the researcher is the one who is responsible for the research. But never do that. And it is never advisable to do that. So a researcher particularly does all the additional research. So like particularly in this moot, how we went about it was that initially me and Manya were supposed to be the speaker, and Yash was supposed to be the researcher.
Hmm.
And uh, what we decided, we there were three issues, so we divided these issues, and one of us was researching upon each of the issues. And what is expected of the researcher, particularly if he's not preparing for the oral rounds, is to do all the additional research, because
Yeah.
while speaking, points may come up upon which we have not particularly deliberated or upon or come across. So a researcher has to know everything which is around a particular issue, and sometimes around a particular, like in our case it was the Rome Statute. We did not, we prepare initially prepared upon CRPC and IPC and evidence while we were going for our mock for our intras in the college.
Hmm.
And at that time Manya was the researcher. So
Hmm.
what he did was he prepared a complete, he had this one very long document which contained the basics, like the very basics, which probably never even come up during the competition, but in
Hmm.
case they do, and if we can use it to our advantage, then the researcher should know all of these points. And
Yeah.
particularly in a trial advocacy competition, the role of a researcher gets all the more important, because as Yash stated that moods are comparatively more rehearsed, and
Hmm.
trial advocacies are much more about your presence of mind, because you
Correct.
never know what the witness might say, or which point may come up, or which point the other team might like cook up something about some absolutely unrelated law, but
Hmm.
it might turn out to be relevant. So the researcher's task here becomes that he has to have this set of like a very big database, firstly, that he should have all the available like resources, books and statutes and every other possible piece of paper that
Hmm.
is required. Other than that, while a speaker speaks, so it's already like for the first years, like when you're doing it for the first time, it is very intimidating, like to stand in front of the judge, and people who have stage fright, like you'll just see the judges and there are like five of them, and you
Yeah.
are alone standing there. And it might be very intimidating, you might just forget everything that you might know about some points, but perhaps all you can remember is your speech, which you practiced again and again. So at this point, the researchers passed on the question, and it's very debatable, like whether a researcher should pass chits or not. But
That's
you should do it when it's absolutely necessary, and if there is some point that the speaker is absolutely blank about, that's where the researcher's role comes in to provide something that the speaker can speak.
Yes. One very important point which Vinisha pointed out, I'd like to address that once the memorials are submitted in a moot, or once the paperwork is done and the practice for the oral rounds begin, it is the role of the researcher to conduct those rounds for the speakers without having the speakers to waste their time. And most importantly, researchers' responsibility is also to prepare a list of questions which might come up your way, which you wouldn't have thought reasonably. For example, one question which I was stuck in one of my moot was, I was standing in the Supreme Court of India, and the judge asked me, "Why are you standing here? How, under which law do you have the right to come here and argue in front of me?" And I had no clue what he was referring to, but it was the Advocates Act, I guess section 31 or 61, I don't remember. So, which said that all the lawyers registered have the right to practice in front of this court. So
Yes.
it is very important for the researcher to be thorough with the Advocates Act, because it might not be traditionally asked during your rounds, but it might come up again. So you have to be prepared, because all these answers, if you give these answers, they definitely add to your point, because the judge is not expecting you to know all these answers, know provisions of Advocates Act. In fact, one of the questions which is also asked is, why are you wearing this black and white uniform? So you should know the provision, which provision under the Advocates Act says allows the black and white uniform to the lawyers. So yes, researcher can also widen his or her scope to incorporate all these questions and prepare so that the speakers could be better prepared at tackling those questions. Yes. So
Yes, exactly.
coming to the now we've talked about the researchers. So coming to the memorials, I've seen that most of the trial advocacy moots do not focus on memorial making per se, but yes, again, some trial advocacies, I've just judged a trial advocacy moot last month, wherein memorials were required. So, what is the importance of memorials in trial advocacy competitions?
Oh, well, if even if memorials are not necessary, or like very focused upon in a trial advocacy competition, memorials actually help you when this was an international competition, but in national trial advocacy competitions, generally you're not provided with issues, or sometimes you might be, or sometimes you might not be. Also, actually, memorials help you to streamline your entire thought process. So while we were preparing, we used to like deliberate upon all the issues like for hours together sometimes, and then finally like our best draft would go in the memorial, and the others were rejected. So while you're preparing, while you're writing your thoughts down while drafting a memorial, so they actually help you to streamline the entire thing or the thought process, and also include all the points in a very proper manner when you'll actually be like you'll be turning up for your oral rounds. So that particularly in this particular competition we did have like a lot of a lot of importance was given to the memorials.
Acha.
So yeah.
And how is the drafting of these memorials different from the other memorials? How in fact, memorials are not the only thing which you are required to draft for trial advocacy competitions. You are also required to draft. You may be required to draft witness statements as well from defense. So what things should you keep in mind while drafting those documents?
Well,
So,
yeah.
Manisha, you want to continue or?
No,
I
no, go
think
ahead.
Manya.
Right. So, what happened is, so as you rightly pointed out, memorials are not an important part in general in mock trial competitions, right? because the more focus is on chief examination and cross examination, and you are
Correct.
particularly judged on that part only. So how you control your narrative, how you sort of cross examine the witnesses and try to procure out the discrepancies. But in our case specifically, there was a memorial. We had to prepare a memorial. It was a
Hmm.
full-fledged memorial, starting from facts of the case to prayer. Now, if we talk about trial advocacy in general, it depends upon competition to competition. There are competitions who also give you to draft witness statements, like in one of the moot which my friend participated in mock.
Hmm.
They are also given the tasks to make defense statements. But in some cases, so it depends upon competition to competition. Now,
Hmm.
coming to drafting, it is the it is altogether moot only. You have to prepare, you have to research well, you have to do citations well. All the
Hmm.
authorities made the cases, books, articles, or any other stuff. Cite
Hmm.
it well, research it well. So you need to be well versed with memorials also in these kind of competitions.
Hmm.
So this
But
can be.
yeah, but one thing which comes to my mind right now is that while drafting the witness statements, the language which you use should not be very formal or legal in nature, because the witness statements, ideally, this is for everyone who is not aware about what trial advocacy or witness statement is. Witness statements are statements recorded under the criminal procedure code of the witnesses, and they help the judge, they help the court to decide the facts what the witnesses saw. So whatever the witness will say will be in layman terms. It will not be in a very decorated or a flowery language. So whenever you're drafting witness statements, you should make sure that your drafts, your statements must not be drafted in a very formal or a legal language. So yeah. Yes, another very important aspect of trial advocacy is the evidence part of the competition. How do you tackle this? What evidences may come your way? How do you use those evidences to come to the conclusion or to frame your side of the story? What is the role of evidences in trial advocacy? Because evidence is something which is not a concern, even a slightest of concern in traditional moods, but it is very, very important for trial advocacy competitions. So, what is the role of evidence? Yash, would you like to answer this?
Yeah, sure. Manya, would you like to go about this because you have more experience about this?
You go first, then if anything is remain, then I'll
Yeah,
add on.
evidence. Basically, evidences are more important in mock trial because you have to play. I don't want to say game, but you have to play
Hmm.
certain points on these points. Like if you have given FIR in your evidence, then you have
Hmm.
to study the FIR. Like there might be a little thing that you can use.
Hmm.
The location will be not according to the facts, so you can use
Hmm.
that point. And sometimes you give some, as I told you earlier, that sometimes you have to give some applications to the judge, and the judge
Hmm.
will be very impressed by this fact that you have prepared an application and everything.
Hmm.
I'm saying this because I was scolded once for not presenting an application. I did presented it, but judge was like, "Have you notarized it and all?"
That's,
So you have to be very smart while presenting an
hmm.
application. Also, you just can't write and present it to the judge. Also, major things are you will get some ballistic reports like of the bullets, like what are bullets, what was the size of the wound on the body. You will get photographs
Hmm.
of the body, you will get photographs of vehicles, objects,
Hmm. Hmm.
a lot of things can be there. You have just imagine that you are witnessing a real situation here. So you have to
Hmm.
use all such evidences because this will make your case. If you are able to prove by all these evidences that yes, this makes my point strong, then you have already provided a major argument which will help you to win. So
Hmm.
breaking down evidence is a very important point. So study well about all the statements. Sometimes you will get statements of witnesses. So study them well. Uh, Read medical reports. Medical reports are very crucial to understand because we are law background and we don't know anything about some stuff
Hmm.
that are mentioned in the medical reports. So study
Hmm.
them well, research upon it, and
Hmm.
research about how there are many books which talk about the wounds on the victim's body and objects
Achha.
that can be used for particular wound. So study them well because this will help you to make your case strong. So basically, study your evidences well, break them, use them for your benefit. Don't temper them. but use them for your benefit, and be smart while presenting any application or presenting any argument with respect to evidence. And
Yeah.
I would like Manya to add something.
Yes,
So,
Manya, do you have
so,
something to add?
so just to give an example for the audience, right? Let us say there is a murder. The case is about a murder, and the body is found on the roadside. The body is collected by police officers and sent to postmortem. Now, you also, as a if you are in prosecution team, you also have to see at what time the body was collected from the murder scene and what time it took for the postmortem. Now, there are certain conditions where if there is more time which has been taken than normal, then some wounds and evidences might disappear. So if you look at this kind of discrepancies, then you can use this point in the favor of prosecution and then argue in the court of law. You can cross-examine the witness, cross-examine the specialist that why did this so much time took place. So this is you can use it as a point. This is how you can play with evidences and minute details.
Basically, evidences are the ones which give you the loopholes where you fit your arguments in from both sides. This is the crux of basically the evidences which is role is played in child advocacy.
I want to add, I want to tell you some interesting incident. I don't know if everyone will be able to understand because I don't even remember exactly. But one of my friend, Mr. Rachit, was participating in a national competition. So there was an application which has to be presented by police, and they were from defense. So a certain point came up where the application needs to be presented, and he smartly drafted a application and presented to the court. And the prosecution opposed this, that this is not true and this is all this. Then they smartly pointed out that this application is provided by prosecution itself. So I'm not able to explain it better, but they smartly used a application which should come from prosecution side for their benefit. So there are certain competitions where you can provide some applications itself, and you can claim that this is the application that we are providing. So you can present some extraordinary evidence in the national competition. So be aware of that and keep researching on that point.
I also remember something in this moot which I was judging a couple of days back. So the defense which was coming, it was the moot was based on 375 rape, and the defense which was coming from the other side, some people were arguing ki rape ke ye elements hai and these elements are not fulfilled. There was nothing like this, and all those they were arguing on minute loopholes. But the team which was the finalist, I guess they did not win, but they were the finalist. They had a very impressive defense. What they did, they negated everything which the prosecution was saying. They did not accept anything. They said everything was a lie, and they kind of stitched the story of the defense in a way which corroborates with every evidence and every fact, but they kind of whirled their way around while arguing for defense. So this could also be done, but you have to take care while preparing such kind of defense. You have to take care that none of your argument is against whatever is given on the record, because in the end you have to prove everything beyond reasonable doubt. So you have to make sure that nothing is against, nothing is in contradiction to what you're saying. So yes, next question is very relevant for the times we are in today, and which is that how preparation for a competition virtually is different from preparing when you are in campus, because and what are the best practices which a team should incorporate in order to maximize the output while preparing virtually. So how did you coordinate effectively apart from ISIL? How did you coordinate effectively as a team to maximize your output?
So actually, if we look at our whole preparation part, the corona had not yet set foot in India. So, but now still there is one we got an outset experience of how virtual preparation can be made. So what happened was, in our college especially, because this is a special kind of competition, being a mock and also an international law, there were very few people who sort of were special in it, right? We had our previous teams and they helped us a lot. Otherwise, there were many less people who would acquainted with this process. Right. So what happened was, we had our alumni. She actually won best speaker in this competition few 2-3 years back. So she was in Delhi. We could not meet her while we were in Delhi. We contacted her after we came back to Ahmedabad to our college when our semester started. So all the arguments and all the our mentor telling us what to do and what not to do, how to prepare the memo.
Okay, so you had a mentor
Because-
all the while you were preparing.
Yes, so that was all virtual. That
Great.
was all virtual. We did actually, we talked to her on phone, we talked to her on WhatsApp, because she is also now a lawyer, so she has very little time. Then also she took time for us and she actually guided us. So that is how we got an offhand virtual experience before Corona took place.
Yeah, because it is very difficult. Most of the students I am facing these days, most of the doubts which the students come up with is that how will we begin our research, what resources we will have. Because nowadays, I must tell you, there are a lot of platforms, lot of libraries which have opened for free access, and Bailey is one of them, I guess. So if anyone of you is interested in researching and is facing this problem of lack of research sources, please go on the internet and find out free libraries. There are a lot of libraries which have opened their access for free during these times because of the obvious difficulties which we are facing. Now, this my last question is for Vinisha, and which is that before that, I'd like to ask one more question. If someone is targeting this moot, your moot symbiosis trial advocacy, what are the essential things which one should be prepared beforehand? Because I guess your the next moots application has also come up. They are invited. They are inviting applications, new teams for the next session of this moot. So, what would you like to tell someone who wants to prepare for this moot?
Well, some of the essentials are firstly the depth of research. You have to research very thoroughly. Like, it is very important, particularly for an international law competition, that there are a lot of things that a lot of people have said, but you have to be very smart and logical about it. That you have to not interpret or use that interpretation to your benefit. So you have to like before you start drafting or before you start finalizing your arguments from any for any of the issues, you have to read about it extensively. So there is this platform called OPIL. Like, a lot of people must be familiar with it. So that provides most of the international law. Like, it is a very huge international law database. So make sure you read. So, like, for every statute there are commentaries. So first you have to exhaust the commentaries. You have to read the commentaries pertaining to your particular crime, or it will be upon a crime, of course. So you have to read the entire commentary on that. Then there is the separate criminal responsibility issue that you have to deal with, whether it is provided for or not. So you have to determine the criminal. So in international criminal law, particularly, the criminal responsibility of a person has to be separately dealt with. Even if you have proved that the crime has been committed, and even if you have proved that the person was like involved in it, sometimes a person might get away with if you fail to prove the criminal responsibility of the person properly. So for SICTA particularly, you should be very thorough with the particular criminal responsibility. If you choose that incorrectly, or if you fail to interpret that correctly, then the entire thing is like futile from the beginning itself. So you have to be very clear about that. Other than that, discuss a lot about it. Like, for every issue there is, like, the three of us, we used to, as I said earlier, we used to sit and deliberate for hours upon a point. So we would not finalize a point until all three of us were convinced that this particular point has to be dealt in this way, or this is the answer. Further, you have to be very thorough with the facts. So it might be possible that you have read all the law there is to read, and you're done with the commentaries, and then you're done with the cases, all the cases there are, but then you miss out on points, very small points in the facts. So I believe we made it a point that we read the problem. The three of us read the problem each day at least once. We were supposed
Yes.
kept a target of twice, but then we read the problem at least once every day, and we did it beginning from the day we were allotted the moot, which was I think around 25 December, and we continued this till 15th of March, I think. So that was like 2 months. So for like 60 days, we read the same problem every day again. And our problem was a 40-page problem. It was not very small either. But we
Oh,
still read it completely every single day. Like all the witness statements and from the prosecution, from the defense and everything. And then we revisited everything that, while drafting, we needed again. So we used to revisit it again and again. And we used to come up with ideas with like on a single word that this can create a doubt from the defense side, or this is a clarity from the prosecution side. So that was very helpful. Further, in SICTA particularly, there are three sides, so you have to prepare from the side of prosecution, defense, and the victims as well. So that was quite interesting. And you have to bring in this emotional side from the side of the victims. So
yeah.
the three things, like the most important essential things that you have to take care is the depth of your research. Whatever you are speaking about, you should know everything about it and everything that surrounds it. Further, you have to be very thorough with the facts, very thorough. You should know the facts as if you have lived them. And lastly, you should be uh, very present in the particular side you're presenting. So if you're arguing from the prosecution side, you have to be very present, and you should not like mix things up. You should not remember points about defense at that time, or like make mistakes like that, because it happens a lot. So that is something you have to be very sure about. Also, since generally very less time is like provided for preparing the oral submissions, so concentrate, like give equal concentration to your drafting and your speech, like because generally it happens that you're just drafting and drafting and drafting until your date of memorial submission, and then you're just left with 10 days to prepare for your oral submissions, which is not enough. So like devote a lot of time, like don't sleep for 2 months while you're doing this moot.
Well, that
And
is given when you are opting for a moot.
yeah, so don't sleep, and like complete your memo early, and then start with your speeches early, oral submissions.
Yeah. So two very important points I got from what Vinisha said. The first one was that you have to have a very good clarity on the facts when you are in a trial advocacy competition, because facts are the only thing you have. The law, as compared to a traditional moot, the law applied in trial advocacy is very less. It's mostly procedural law. Yeah. And the second thing which she pointed out was the daily discussions. Every day you read the facts and you conduct your research, and then you do daily discussions so that you progress on the research, you have a better understanding of the facts, and then you read the facts again and discuss it with your teammates. That is the best way to go about for a moot court competition. One more thing
Another
on
point,
yeah.
just one point that I would like to add with trial advocacy competitions particularly is like which proved to be very beneficial for us, which should definitely be done, is that you should gather your friends and like prepare for one side each day. So you ask them to be witnesses, because we in a trial advocacy competition like moots, we prepare our speech a lot, we mug it up, and then we're very thorough with it, but then we're not very sure about the briefing part and the chief and cross
Yeah.
examinations. So you should actually practice that live too. So we used to gather at somebody's place, and like there would be like 3 to 4 people who would be our witnesses, and we take turns in briefing them,
Oh.
so that all of us know properly how to brief the witnesses. And we'll just point out each other's mistakes, that this is the mistake that was committed in briefing which cannot be done. So I think by the end of this whole thing, we were quite prepared with the briefing part. We knew exactly how did we have to brief the witnesses, and there was no important point that was missed by us. So that is very important, particularly with trial advocacy competitions.
Another thing which Vinisha you just mentioned in passing by, which I think is very very important for all of us to know, that while you are trying to argue for the prosecution, you have to bring out the emotional side. So I would really want you to elaborate on this, because not many people are aware that you have to play these gimmicks while you're conducting yourself in a trial advocacy mode.
Well, yeah. So, like, the drafting that we did and the whole preparation, the way our speeches were. So the defense side was very, we also portrayed this complete side. So the accused in our case, we tried to present. We incorporated all of these points, which are also done in all the moods. That how he's a very good person, and
Yeah,
how it is very improbable that he would do such a thing
yeah,
to such
correct,
a
correct.
large amount of people. And
Yeah,
from the victim side, we would brief the witnesses such a way, like, they wouldn't exactly cry, but then they would, like,
yeah,
explain in a very heartfelt way, like,
uh,
how they were wronged, and how unfortunate they were to be present in that country for that time, and,
yeah.
like, what bad things happened to them. They, and most of the times, they lose their family, and their sons or their daughters. So that side actually plays very well before
Mhm.
the judges, and it proves the point that harm was actually done. And
It's more than a point or a legal submission. It's kind of like creating a story, so that the judge could, your story is more believable. This is the purpose of trial, that there are two stories, two sets of facts, both sides are trying to establish facts only. So if your story is more believable with least amount of contradictions, it is going to be accepted. And apart from that, the emotional aspect definitely plays a role. So yes, be mindful, everyone. If you're going for a trial advocacy, be mindful for this fact also. If you have a victim, if you have a witness who has been wronged, it's okay if he cries a tear or two during the oral rounds. So yes. Now I guess we have 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So if we can open the session for Q&A, and anyone who has doubts, who wants to know anything about the trial advocacy, who wants to know how these people, how their chances of being removed for first. Yes, there's this question: how good are the chances of winning this moot for a first-year moot team, or a team mooting for the first time? Were there any first-year moot teams in your competition?
Um, I think it doesn't matter that you are in first year, second year, or third year,
Yeah.
because you have to read. Like if there is a case, for example, say murder, then
Hmm.
first year I have to read that, second year I have to read that, third year. But the difference will be that second year and third year will be understanding more about the concept because they will be able to relate other laws as well. But
Hmm.
it depends on your researching, your speaking skills, your ability to break down evidences, your ability to conduct examination. So I don't think it matters that you are in
Hmm.
first year. If you are prepared well, if you have good speaking skills, if you are able to uh, do a proper examination on the spot,
Hmm.
then you can go for it.
yeah,
We
and for
participated for the
Ah.
first time.
exactly, and for SICTA, I think it does not matter at all, because anyway, like, till yet, also in, like, in our college, we have not been taught international law, and this
Hmm.
competition is entirely based on international criminal law. So I do not think it matters anyway. Like, all
Hmm.
the teams who are showing up for the competition have done all the study themselves, and I'm sure you'll have a lot of help from your seniors.
Yeah. So this one more. Acha, this is a very common misconception among students, that they think if they haven't studied a law, then it would not be a good idea to go for a moot based on that law. But they do not understand that when you study some law in a class, you try to get an overview of that subject. But when you deal with that subject for a moot, you specifically hunt down some provisions and you gain expertise on those provisions. So although I think if you're in third year or fourth year, you might have an advantage because you've read procedural laws, which is important and which is very lengthy also. But at the same time, that should not be a difficulty for any moot, and including trial advocacy. Yes. what is the Sejal is asking what is the difference in decorum of trial advocacy moods, and what what the rules for the procedure. So how again this question, how should a speaker or a witness conduct themselves as far as the decorum is concerned of the court?
Actually, it completely depends on the moot itself. The rules and procedures of every moot differ from every other competition. But the one thing that you have to keep in mind is as Yash pointed out, do not get aggressive. It is felt like that is a good idea to do, to intimidate your witness while cross-examining them so that they say the truth. But then that is not the case, because in your college it is possible, like while you're doing some intras, that the witness might get intimidated. But in competitions like these, when you're going for a national level competitions, the witnesses are very experienced and prepped as well, so they are not novices. So the demeanor is the same. You have to be extremely respectful to the judge, and it should not seem like you're questioning their authority or getting aggressive. You should be very, it being very calm and level minded also helps you to explain your point better. So one thing that you have to keep in mind is that you have to explain your point, but that has to be done in a very formal way, in a very proper language. So you should probably practice that before going for any moot court competition, that you are not using informal words like yeah and hello, and avoid using those. That's all.
I would like to add one point that whenever you are conducting an examination, don't hate the other witness. He's just a witness. Comfort him that if you start misbehaving with the witness, then he will also not give you answers. He will misbehave with you too. He will start saying random things. So you have to be calm, as Vinisha just pointed out. You have to be calm. You have to be professional. You can be a little intimidating, but don't do it over. Don't go over aggressive, because the judge will not like it.
Yes, correct.
So I believe this is the art of cross-examining, right? Because when you're cross-examining other party's witness, you know that he is not very easily going to give away the discrepancies. So rather than being very angry or very intimidating, that is the tact of how can you confuse him without intimidating. That is the tact of cross-examination.
You have to kind of pull off a fact from your pocket which he's not prepared for.
Exactly, your questions have to be intimidating.
Because chief and cross is not very much prepared in advance. So the element of surprise plays a very important role while you're conducting cross. You might be surprised as the counsel, or you might surprise the other person as a witness. So yes, that happens. I guess we are done with the questions now. So for the benefit of everyone, I'd like to just point it out. Since we've addressed this question also, the importance of memorials is obviously increasing in these moot court competitions. And we have also shared on our website, we've shared the best memos for trial advocacy moots also. I hope that you guys will also share your memos with us. Considering the copyright remains with you, of course. But we have on our website posted certain best memorials for all types of national, international, and trial advocacy moots. So please go and check out. I can also share the link with you guys. Just hold on. Yeah, this is it. So if you want to see how a best memorial looks for a national, international, or a trial advocacy moot, you can go on to this page, everyone, and find out the best memorials. Apart from this, there's this last announcement I would like to make. We have provided, as far as trial advocacy is concerned, we have dealt with trial advocacy in our memorial course. So we have two courses on mooting, memorial course and the oral argumentation course. Both the courses we have dealt with how to deal with trial advocacy, especially in the oral argumentation course, because that is very important. How you structure your transcript, how you prepare for the cross-examination, how you invite witnesses, all the decorum of the court. We've codified it also in a separate module. So please go and check out our oral argumentation course. And for now, we are providing a bundle course in which the memorial and the oral argumentation course can be enrolled for as a bundle. And there are big discounts on the bundle course, which we will let you know on the group also. So yeah, I guess this is it. Thank you so much, Vinisha, Manya, and Yash for taking out your time and joining us for the session. If and for the audience, if someone has missed attending this session, we are going to upload this on our YouTube channel, and they can visit us on YouTube and watch this episode again. Now, all of you who have seen this, who have been a part of this webinar, you also please go to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon and subscribe it. It feels amazing to say this. And also like this video, share it with your friends who are interested in trial advocacy moot court competitions. We are going to post regular webinars on our channel, so please go ahead and subscribe it.